And they had, of course, a celebration there at Washele and all across this area, different celebrations. We forget very often the things that people do and those who have served beside us. Now, of all of you men and those of you that were veterans that stood, how many of you, and you don't have to stand, I'm going to have you stand, but how many of you every once in a while, and just by showing of hands, how many of you every once in a while think of one of your comrades that you served with and wonder maybe where they're at today? Would you lift your hand? Yeah. Nobody else knows them. Your wife, your family, they don't know them. Maybe you were put in a very precarious situation when you were in battle, and there were some very difficult things you went through on the battlefield, but you still think about them. Maybe even whisper a prayer for them, not knowing if they're saved or lost. Or maybe they are saved. Maybe you were friends, and maybe you went and both of you through maybe whatever, maybe a chaplain, or maybe another fellow comrade, fellow soldier. You heard the gospel and got saved, and you survived whatever war that you were in or whatever service that you had. But you remember those people. Why would it be any different, or why should it be any different in God's family? Would you think that there would be battle scars in ministry from Satan? Look at what he writes in verse number 25. He writes, "Now to him that is of power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the mystery which was kept silent, secret since the world began." That's not the verse I was looking for, excuse me. It's 20. "And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly." So he's writing to the people in Rome, and he's acknowledging the difficulty that they are going through and the battles that they're going through. And he is recognizing those who stood with him during battles himself. And he's saying, not long from now, shortly, the Lord is going to bruise Satan. He's bruised you plenty, but God's going to bruise him. He's going to get his due. We need to think and remember those of our Christian comrades who have picked us up when we've fallen on the battlefield, who we've served side by side with, and we've enjoyed that working for the Lord together. That kindness, that encouragement, that mentoring. Some of those people may be in this room for you. Some of them may not even be anywhere near this state. Paul's reminiscing. It's good for us in our Christian life to go back and do that. Every once in a while. They've gone to great lengths on Facebook. I'll get a note from somebody that probably 20 years ago or 30 years ago that I witnessed to or did something for, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember it. But when they mention it, I remember them. Who do you remember this morning? Maybe it was a Sunday school teacher that always made you feel special when you came to that class. And There was that certain teacher. Maybe it was a pastor. Maybe it was a pastor. Maybe it was somebody in your life, and you were going through a difficulty, you were going through a struggle, and that man of God helped you in some way. Maybe it was a mother or a father. Maybe it was some family member. Paul mentions a couple of times. He in verse 13, he says, "Salute Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother and mine." Must have been a brother. You have the same mother, obviously that would probably mean he would be related, right? Don't you think? Paul had family. He mentions another. He writes about a kinsman. Let's see which verse. 7. Salute Andronicus and Junia, my what? Kinsman. Paul had relatives in the faith. You don't think Paul tried to go and witness to his own family? I'm sure he did. When he went back to Tarsus, when he went back into that region where he grew up, I'm sure he was very vocal about the story of what happened to him when he got saved. And so, who are the people in your life that have helped you? I don't think any of us have been in prison, or at least I hope. If you are, it probably wouldn't be for the same reasons Paul was. And so, but Paul was imprisoned on numerous times, numerous occasions. And Paul is recognizing the little things, the simple things, things that nobody else had any idea that these people did. He could have acknowledged a lot of other people, but he chose people who only he identified with, and some of those of the church in Rome would remember their names, but these are not the most popular names or the main names of people that everybody would know. He's remembering the regular Joes, the just congregation. Good people who meant more than they really knew to him. When in Rome, when you're living in this wicked world, and you're going through the difficulties, and we all do, we all go through struggles, and we all have doubts and fears and difficulties and trials and all kinds of things that go on in our life. And the things that mean the most of all the things that we go through are the things that these kind of people do for us. And it's good that they hear about it. Paul had the privilege, because he's writing Scripture and because God used him and put this in here, I think for our encouragement to do so, to be able to publicly, in a letter, bring these people to light. And to acknowledge that it's not just the preachers, it's not even one of the apostles are even mentioned. Note what he says. He says in verse, let's see here, where did he mention the word apostles? Go down to verse, I'm trying to scan. You see it before I do, yell it out, okay? That's okay. What number? There it is. Salute Andronicus and Junia, my kinsmen and my fellow prisoners, who are of note among the apostles. He doesn't even mention any of their names. He just uses the general expression, the apostles. But he acknowledges them. He mentions their names. This, if you will, is the who's who behind the scenes. They're not mentioned. These are not the ones mentioned like in Hebrews 11. And it's interesting that God, even in Hebrews 11, mentions people in there and leaves people out that you would think would have to be in there. he mentions Rahab, who was a harlot, who understood and acknowledged by faith that Israel's God was the true God, and became the grandmother of Boaz and Obed and Jesse and David, and was in the lineage of Christ. There are a lot of people of faith that are beyond ministers of God and beyond our own family, that touch our lives and do things that they have no idea the impact that they made on us. And we appreciate it. But sometimes we don't say it. Sometimes we don't acknowledge it. It's important to acknowledge the things that people do. Who has God brought to your mind right now? Who are the people that, as we've been going down through this and we've been thinking about that idea of remembering our comrades, those who you've stood shoulder to shoulder, those who you've prayed with, those who you've witnessed with, those who you've served with, those who you have gone through battles with, those that have been there with trial, those who have been there through difficulties, those that have stood by you and done things for you and encouraged you. Who can you thank today for what they've done?